Hello everyone, today's video will be very boring because it will be about metaphysics. That's right. Now, this video is clearly inspired in the work of Edward Feser, a very popular and a very amazing Thomist philosopher. I totally recommend you to read about him because he's very great. He's amazing. So, in his book, The 5 Proofs for the Existence of God, he explains what he calls the Neo Platonic proof of God. So let us go. Now, always remember that classical theism, or the idea that God exists, is proven through philosophy, not through religion. And of course, Aristotle, Plato, all of those guys, they had no idea about Jesus because Jesus wasn't even born. And the Bible wasn't even written. So Jesus could have died and rotten like a corpse, but that doesn't really matter. It doesn't change anything because God would still exist. So let us go. Now, in Feser's formulation, we find the following: things of our experience are composite. That is true. They are composite in the physical and in the metaphysical. For example, think of a human being. He is composed of his flesh, of his cells, of his bones, all of that. No, but he also is composite of metaphysical stuff. Let's say like existence and essence. For example, the existence is, well, your way is your being. You exist right here, right now, but also you have your essence, which is what makes you be you. For example, the essence of a dog and of a human being is different. Why? Because the human being is rational and the dog is not rational. And of course, their form is clearly different. They are very different kinds of animals. And that is their essence, what makes them be what they are, and their existence. So that would mean that things in our experience, they are metaphysically composite and physically composite in both ways. Now, a composite exists at any moment only so far as its parts are combined at that moment. That's true. This composite of parts requires a concurrent cause. Therefore, anything composed has a cause for its existence at any given moment it exists. Of course, because we only understand that something is composite in relation to the world. For example, you only understand that your composition because you have your torso, your arms, your legs. That is what they made the human being, what they made up the human being. So yeah, they have that type of relationship. So if they were not united, you would not have a human being. Now, hence each thing in our experience has a cause at any given moment it exists. If the cause of the existence of a composed thing at any given moment is itself composed, then it will in turn require a cause for its own existence at that moment. That's true. The return of causes implied by this is hierarchical in nature, and such a return must have a first member. Only something absolutely simple or uncompounded could be the first member of that series. Therefore, the existence of each thing in our experience presupposes an absolutely simple or uncompounded cause, meaning something that is completely one, completely simple, and is not composite neither in the physical nor in the metaphysical, meaning that the essence and the existence of this thing is the same. There isn't a difference between the essence and the existence. Now, what is this about hierarchical? Let us look. Now, we have two types of series. A series that is linear and another that is hierarchical. For example, in a linear, think about the relationship between mothers and daughters. Does the daughter depend on the mother? Yes, in a linear way, meaning that if the mother is not there, then the child will not be born. But the daughter doesn't depend on her mother to reproduce. So you could take away the mother and the child could still reproduce. That is linear. They depend on one another in a linear way, in a, let's say, in time. But they do not depend right here, right now. But in a hierarchical series, like the relationship between the apple and the molecules and the molecules and the atoms, this is a dependency that is right here, right now. So, if you take away the atoms of the apple, what do you think will happen? Well, you don't have an apple anymore. That is what hierarchical means. It's right here, right now. Think of, for example, in a book on the table. So you find that the book depends on the table, and the table depends on the house, and the house depends of the earth. So you have this relationship where if you take a member of the series, the entire series will stop making sense. So that is what hierarchical means. Right here, right now, and a linear doesn't depend right here, right now. And as we have already saw, this type of series is hierarchical in nature. Now, let's continue. Therefore, the existence of each thing in our experience presupposes an absolutely simple or compounded truth. For there to be more than one absolutely simple or uncompounded truth, each would have some distinguishing feature that the other does not possess. That is the principle of indiscernible entities, meaning that if you have two entities and they are completely the same, well, in that case you will not have multiple, you will just have one. Because if you tell me that you have two rabbits and the two rabbits are completely alike in the same place, in the same time, in everywhere, therefore they are only one. So you will need a distinguishing feature. However, but for a truth to have such a feature, it would have to have parts, in which case it will not truly be simple or uncompounded. Therefore, no absolutely simple or uncompounded truth can have such a distinguishing feature, meaning that is only one. There we have two attributes, unity and simplicity. Now, if the absolutely simple or uncompounded truth were subject to change, then it would have parts that it acquires or loses, which being simple or uncompounded, it does not possess. Therefore, the absolutely simple or uncompounded truth is immutable or unchanging. It cannot change in any way. But if you don't change in any possible way, therefore eternity follows, because it doesn't change in any way. So yeah, from immutability logically follows eternity. It cannot stop being, it cannot be in another way, so therefore it's just the same thing always and forever. Now, I forgot to translate there. But you have unity, simplicity, immutability, and eternity. Now, everything is either a mind, or a mental content, or a material entity, or an abstract entity. An abstract entity is totally inert. Think, for example, in mathematics, in the principles of logic. They clearly exist. They are not a construct of our mind. Think in something that doesn't make logical sense. For example, think something that violates the principle of contradiction, the law of non-contradiction. Imagine that you say, well, this table is white, but then you say, well, now this very same table is black. It cannot be the two ways. It doesn't make sense. It has to be one or the other. So the abstract entities, they are actually inert. They exist in the world, but they do not interact with the world. They are there because it's not something that we built in our mind, but something that we discovered, because it will still be there even if we were not here. Now, therefore, the absolutely simple cannot be an abstract entity. Why? Because it is responsible of everything that exists. Now, a material entity has parts and is unchangeable. However, that is not possible because the completely simple doesn't have parts. Now, A mental content presupposes the existence of a mind, so it cannot be the ultimate cause of anything. Therefore, it has to be a mind. Now, given that the absolutely simple or uncompounded cause is unique, everything that is not is composed. Every composed thing has the absolutely simple or uncompounded cause as its ultimate cause. Therefore, the absolutely simple or uncompounded cause is the ultimate cause of everything. If the absolutely simple or uncompounded cause had potentialities in addition to actualities, it would have parts. Therefore, since it has no parts, it must be purely actual. Now, what is this whole thing about actuality and potentiality? Well, this is a very important distinction that is found in Aristotle. Now, what is actuality? Actuality is that which is right here, right now. For example, think of a chicken. The chicken is right here, right now. However, the chicken has the potentiality to die. Or think of the egg. The egg has the potentiality to be a chicken, but the egg right here, right now, is in actuality. Is right now. However, it has the potentiality to become a chicken. Now think of myself. I have the potentiality to die because I'm alive, but I will only die if you shoot me or you kill me with an axe, for example. So, for something to change, for the potentiality to be actualized, to happen, it depends on something else that is inert. For example, I will only die if you shoot me, if you hit me with an axe, but that will only happen if your finger shoots the thing in the pistol. I forgot the name in English. And the same thing for the axe. So you have this dependency of something else that is inert, right here, right now, an actuality. Now, there is an amazing video of this distinction by the professor Agustin Echeverria, but because you guys don't understand Spanish, then I will recommend you the videos of the Thomistic Disputations. It's an amazing channel on Thomistic metaphysics, so please watch it. Now, a purely actual cause must be perfect, omnipotent, completely good, and omniscient. Therefore, there exists a cause that is simple or uncompounded, unique, immutable, eternal, immaterial, a mind or an intellect, the ultimate uncaused cause of everything that is not itself, purely actual, perfect, omnipotent, completely good, and omniscient. But the existence of such a thing, it will mean that it's God, because all of these are the divine attributes, what makes God be God. Now, why being perfect, why being omnipotent, why being completely good is something that is understood by pure actuality. Well, there is a very important principle that you cannot forget. This principle is the principle of damn it, I forgot the name. Proportionate causality, I think is the name. Well, but the meaning is that which is in the effect is already in the cause. Think, for example, in a house burning. Well, the house is only burning because of the flamethrower. Now, where does the flames come from? Do they come from anything? From nothing? Do they appear out of thin air? No, of course not. They come from the flamethrower and the chemicals inside of the flamethrowers. So that which was in the effect was already present in the cause. For example, a dog will only give birth to a dog, or a human being to a human being. That which is in the cause is already in the effect. That is a very important principle that you cannot ignore. It's essential to Thomistic metaphysics. Now, pure being is perfect, as it is the cause of everything that exists, and being pure art means that it can actualize any potentiality. Since everything that is in the effect is in the cause, therefore pure being is perfect and lacks nothing. Now, why being a mind? And this is very important because you need to understand what the mind is or what the intellect is. Now, the intellect is your, let's say, your capacity to abstract forms, universals, and logical principles, to understand that which is not material. For example, when you look at a cat, imagine a little cat, a big cat, a cat that is yellow, a cat that is black, that is white, but you understand that all of those guys, they are different. However, they are all cats. They all have a universal thing, catness, that they all belong to. This is the form of the cat, what makes the cat be a cat and not a rock. You understand that through your intellect. The same way you understand a logical principle through your intellect. It's something that is in the world, but it's not something that is material. But you can understand it, and that is what the intellect is. So in a way, those abstract things in the world, they are already in your intellect, as if they were inside of it. It's not literally inside of it, but you get the relationship. It's similar. Now, the pure actual thing is omnipotent, as it can actualize everything that is logical or possible in the world. That is what we saw earlier. But it's also omniscient, because it can understand and abstract the forms. Because, as we already saw, it's responsible of everything that exists. It will mean that it's responsible of the universals, of the forms, of the logical principles. And that will mean that they already exist in this pure being, in this cause of everything that there is. So yeah, if those things, they are already in this thing, then that will mean that it's a mind, because the intellect works the same way. It's the same thing, the same definition. So therefore, God would be an intellect, a mind, and not a thing. Now, why being all good? This is very important because you need to understand what evil is. Think, for example, of ignorance. You are ignorant, and that is bad because you lack knowledge. If you lack a food, then that is an evil, because you should have a food, but you don't have it. If you feel hunger, then that is evil too, because you will need the nutrients in your body, but you don't have them. So evil is lacking something. The same way as lacking sight is something bad, because you should be able to look, but you cannot look. You should have sight, but you don't have sight. That is why evil is a privation. It's not something that is in the world, but it's just lacking something, lacking goodness, or lacking something that is good. Now, since God is the origin of everything, and He is perfect, therefore He lacks nothing. And if evil is only lacking goodness, is only lacking something, then therefore God cannot be evil. But he has to be good, because that which is in the earth is already in the cross, and we see that something that is good clearly exists, then therefore God is good. And not only good, but the supreme goodness, the supreme good. And so we discover that all of the divine attributes are in this completely simple thing. Attributes like unity, simplicity, mutability, eternity, perfection, or goodness, omniscient, or powerful, all of those things. So therefore, yes, that would mean that God exists in a nutshell, and that will be it.